Okay, time for a new video. Welcome back to my channel, or hello if you're new. This is yet another Eurovision 2025 related video here on my channel, and today I'm going to be talking about a subject that I don't think I've ever really addressed on my channel previously, and it is rumours. Specifically, rumours as to who could be representing the United Kingdom at the upcoming edition of the Eurovision Song Contest, which, as we all know, will take place this May in Basel, Switzerland. As always, you're welcome to let me know your thoughts on anything I discuss in today's video by leaving a comment down below, and as always, there are links in the description to my other social media pages. Check them out if you so wish. I want to begin this video by saying that it obviously should not be taken too seriously. The names that I'm about to mention probably will be well clear of this year's competition. But long story short, over the past 2 weeks or so, I've been going through social media a little bit, and I'm really not using social media too much these days. But I've been taking a look at the artists who've been getting a little bit of attention, a little bit of buzz, perhaps more so than usual, because it's around this time every year where we start to hear and see rumours as to who could be representing not just the United Kingdom, but many different countries. And I'm just the same as most other Eurovision fans. I always have been. I am always interested in a good rumour. I don't always believe them at all, and a lot of the time they're inaccurate. But if somebody says, oh, this person has now started following the Eurovision account on Instagram, or this person's been working with notable songwriters who've been involved with Eurovision in the past, or this person's been at a songwriting camp, could we see them in a national final? Seeing that sort of stuff does get me a little bit excited. It does get me a little bit pumped up for the Eurovision season, especially if it's a really notable name or an artist whose music I've really enjoyed in the past. Now, there are a few rumours floating around at the moment as to who could be representing the United Kingdom. So I've been looking through Twitter, I've been looking in a few other places, and very recently I put together a list of names, and I'm going to be going through those names in just a moment's time. But I will say again, I don't think for 1 minute it's going to be any of these artists. Not at all. Not at all. Now, a few years ago, I would have said somebody like Ollie Alexander is too famous. He's too successful, he's too well known to represent the United Kingdom at Eurovision, ignoring the fact that way back in the day, we had some of the biggest artists from the UK at that time representing the UK. We had Cliff Richard, for crying out loud, and he was a really big deal back in the 60s, and he did Eurovision twice for us. And when Ollie Alexander was announced as our representative for 2024, I thought, okay, this is quite exciting, because even though I'm not a huge fan of his music, he is a notable, quite successful name. So I think what I've been thinking about whilst compiling this list is it doesn't really matter if there's a part of me that thinks they are a bit too famous to do Eurovision. Because really, I don't think that matters anymore for the BBC. I think, if anything, they feel a bit more confident about approaching quite successful names, musicians who've had, you know, maybe a #1 album or two, or a #1 single or two, or success in the continent, things like that. Whereas 10 years ago, during the dark, dark days of Electro Velvet, I don't think the BBC even considered asking really notable names, especially because we had the likes of Engelbert Humperdinck and Bonnie Tyler, really successful names once upon a time, but their results were massively disappointing. The songs simply weren't strong enough. So I think the BBC were put off for many years about even going into that sort of territory. And of course, a lot of successful artists don't want to do Eurovision because they're worried it might damage their career, or they see Eurovision as a load of crap, they think it's a waste of time, etc, etc. Sometimes it might just be a case of, okay, we don't mind the idea of doing Eurovision, but we've got something else on at the time, and so on. Anyway, as you can see, I'm rambling big time. But what I'm going to do is go through these names, and I'm actually going to go through them. Yeah, I think I'll go through them from top to bottom. They're in no particular order, and as I said earlier, I have compiled this list based on what I've seen on social media, not just over the past few weeks, but really over the past few years, because some of these names have been rumoured in the past. And I remember when I first became a Eurovision fan, or rather a Eurovision fan year-round, and names like Adele and Coldplay and Charlotte Church were being rumoured every year for the United Kingdom, and I thought to myself, they're too famous. They wouldn't go near Eurovision. They don't need to. But here's the thing, and this is applicable, I think, to any country taking part in the competition. If you are a young up-and-coming artist, you might look at Eurovision and sneer, but the exposure you will get is extraordinary, and it could set you up for many years to come. It could be the start of your career. You could go from performing in pubs to performing on stage in front of many thousands of people and well over 100 million people across the globe on television and online watching you live. And you'll have fans from all corners of the globe, not just Europe, if you do Eurovision. The doors will open like you would not believe. It's very exciting. And in many ways I think to myself, wow, why would you not say yes to doing Eurovision, especially if you're approached by the broadcaster? You know, the opportunities are immense. And yes, it can go wrong and your career might falter a little bit. But honestly, I think the positives far outweigh the negatives. Anyway, the first name I'm looking at, and I will have to type these names in so I can speak a bit more accurately about them, but the first name is probably the name that's been getting the most buzz recently, and that is Franz Ferdinand, who are a Scottish rock group who've been making music for 2 decades, and they've had quite a bit of success here in the UK and further afield. The lead singer is Alex Kapranos, who is part Greek, and I don't know this for sure, but I believe many, many years ago there was some talk about him, or indeed his group, representing Greece at the Eurovision Song Contest. And several weeks ago I actually put up a wish list post regarding Greece on the joint Instagram page, link in the description as always, and I put Franz Ferdinand on that list. Well, anyway, he's 52, and they've released a whole bunch of albums, including one that came out. Is it out yet? Yes, it went to number 1 here in the. Yes, it went to number 1 very, very recently. It's The Human Fear. It's their 6th album. Now, there's a song on this album called Hooked, which is 2 minutes and 41 seconds long, and I've heard it, and I don't mind it. I don't love it, but I don't mind it. And if you look at that video online, well, it's not a music video, it's just the audio, but there's a few comments from people saying, Eurovision 2025, ? Things like that. So definitely I think this rumour, however it started, is gaining some traction. And it would be very interesting because all of their albums have charted in the top 3 in the UK. They've also had success in Belgium and Ireland. Okay, my apologies. All of their albums have charted in the top 3 in Scotland, and all of them have charted in the top 10 in the UK. They've also had some minor success in France, the Netherlands and Switzerland. And I do vaguely remember them bursting onto the scene, as it says in front of me, 2004, 21 years ago when Take Me Out was released. That was such a big song, had some success in the US as well. For many years they've not really released anything that's troubled the charts, in terms of singles that is, but they're still successful. They still tour, they've been nominated for a bunch of awards, and they're still going strong. And I think that would be a very interesting name to have at Eurovision, I really do. And that is the strongest rumour, I suppose, that I've seen thus far. The next name on the list is somebody that I think would never go near the contest, and that is Talia Debret Barnett, or FKA Twigs, who was born on on January the 16th, 1988, in Cheltenham, making them 37 years old. They've been nominated for the Mercury Prize, which is quite a prestigious award for Best Albums of the Year, pretty much. She's had some success in the US. Her music is described as avant pop, trip-hop, techno and electronic. I've only heard a few bits and pieces of her work in the past. I can't say it's really my cup of tea. She has dated Robert Pattinson in the past, and she has an album that's coming out in just a few days' time called Eusexua, which I'm probably mispronouncing. Something that's always worth bearing in mind with regards to anybody for any country and Eurovision-related rumours is that they might well be following certain accounts on social media. That could be a hint that they could be doing something at the contest. They may well have been at a songwriting camp. They may well have an album coming out in the spring around the time of the contest. They might have lots of tour dates lined up for after the contest, and they might be announcing more as time moves forwards. And obviously, with this particular artist, they've got an album coming out. They're going to be promoting the hell out of it. There's going to be a tour between March and June. And interestingly, the whole of May is empty. San Francisco, April the 19th, then nothing until Barcelona on June the 5th. Interesting that May is blank. Now, looking at this album that's coming out, every song bar one is over 3 minutes. Oh no, there's two. Sticky and Childlike Things. They're both under 3 minutes long. So there we go. Maybe it's going to be a very, very different sound and a very, very different artist for the UK. But I don't think it's going to be them. The next person on the list is, and I need to get through this at a much quicker pace, is again somebody whose name has been bandied around on social media quite significantly in the past few weeks, and that is Callum Scott, who's 36, and he was on Britain's Got Talent, and I don't think he won it. I don't really watch that show, but he's released 2 albums. The last one was a few years ago. He's been nominated for a Brit Award. He did a cover of Dancing on My Own, which is a cracking song by Robin, and I must say I prefer the original. But his 2 albums, his first one went to number 4 in the UK, the second one didn't even make the top 40, so things fell off quite quickly. He's worked with Lost Frequencies, he's worked with Jax Jones, he's worked with Leona Lewis, including last year. Oh no, it won't be because that's a cover. But who knows, maybe he'll team up with somebody to do Eurovision. I think that's actually a very realistic choice. Can't say I'm a huge fan, not massively familiar with his content though. We'll just have to wait and see. Next up, and there are rumours definitely floating about that it could be a Scottish artist, about time if you ask me, for the UK Eurovision. But next up is Katie Tunstall, who is 49 from Edinburgh. And her music is folk rock, indie rock, pop rock. She's been around a long, long time. She's got quite a notable voice. Her last album came out 2 years ago with Susie Quattro, which I didn't know. But she's released a whole load of albums, beginning in 2004. She's also had a top 10 album in the US. She's been successful in Ireland and somewhat in the Netherlands and Germany as well. Her albums are still doing very well. I'm not really familiar with any of her recent music whatsoever, but she's worked with James Bay, who also could be a rumour for the UK Eurovision. Suddenly I See, that's a cracking song, makes me think of Gavin and Stacey. Hold On, If Only. Yeah, she was definitely, with all due respect, more commercially successful maybe, 18, 19 years ago. But I think her doing Eurovision, again, I think that's fairly realistic. I think it's entirely possible that she could do it. And she's also been nominated for the Mercury Prize. She is a pretty seasoned performer. The next artist, this would be sensational. It's The Last Dinner Party, who sort of burst onto the scene a year or two ago. Their music is very old school in the sense that it feels classic, baroque, very, very, I suppose, unconventional, because when you think of certainly chart music here in the UK, it's rap, it's hip-hop, it's pants stuff. But this feels really sort of Gen Z, really tapping into what the youth might be very interested in these days, I suppose. It's an all-female group. Their album Prelude to Ecstasy went to #1 and did well in Ireland, the Netherlands and Belgium. Their best song is probably The Feminine Urge, which I can see in front of me. They've got a very distinct look. They won the BBC Sound of poll, which they should be using every damn year for Eurovision. It's been running for a very long time. It's essentially a poll where, I think it's every January, it's a list of the most exciting artists for the next 12 months and beyond, something like that. Loads of famous people have won it in the past, and The Last Dinner Party won it last year, and they've had a #1 album, and they're probably going to be nominated for a Brit Award or two when those nominations come out in a few days' time. That would be very, very exciting. The next artist is another Scot, Emily Sandé, and I suppose a little bit similar to Katie Tunstall here, in the sense that they were more, dare I say it, commercially successful many years ago. They're 37. They're not actually Scottish. I thought they were. Oh, they moved to Scotland when they were young. They were actually born in Sunderland. They've released a whole bunch of albums. They've got an MBE. Their last album came out last year, but their first album, Our Version of Events, which came out in 2012, that was in the charts for absolutely ages, and it did well in Belgium, France, Germany, Ireland, and Switzerland. But their last album charted at 49, but they've had so many big songs. Next to Me, Clown, My Kind of Love. We're going back many years here. Again, a very distinct voice. Beneath You're Beautiful with Labyrinth, that's a cracker. Yeah, very distinct voice, very seasoned performer, very well known, even if non-fans probably aren't familiar with any of her recent material. But yeah, she's won Brit Awards, and she performed at the opening and closing ceremonies of the 2012 London Olympic Games. I think, again, a few years ago I would have said she's too famous to do it, but does that really matter anymore? I'm not sure. And it's interesting to think about with other countries as well. Does it matter if you're too famous in another country? Probably not. Next up is Cat Burns. Now, I have listened to some of her music, but I just don't really remember it. Her full name is Katrina Burns Temison. She's 24 from London. Her first album came out last July, charted at #7. Go, her song from 2020, charted at #2 and did all right in Ireland and also New Zealand. She's worked with a couple of other artists. She's done a cover of Teenage Dirtbag, and she's also supported Ed Sheeran, years and years, Hello Ollie Alexander, and Sam Smith on tour, and they've been nominated for a couple of Brit Awards in the past. I can't remember what song of theirs I quite enjoy. It was a very accessible track. Alone, maybe? I don't know. Can't remember. But I think that's a very exciting choice, potentially. Okay, maybe they're not super young at 24, but they're an artist who's coming onto the scene. They've done well with their first album, and now Eurovision could give them even more European and worldwide exposure. Very exciting times, potentially. The next artist is, and this is a very interesting one, and I would not be mad about it, Eliza Doolittle, whose real name is Eliza Caird, born in April 1988, making them 36, from London. Her mother, Frances Ruffell, sang for the UK in 1994 with one of the most underrated British entries, We Will Be Free, Lonely Symphony. Now, what does it say here? Yes, she's released 4 albums. The first one, back in 2010, did very well. Pack Up was everywhere, and that's a cracking song. And then Big When I Was Little, which I think is from her second album, wasn't so successful. And she hasn't really had a great deal, again, of not that this matters, but she hasn't had a great deal of commercial success for many years. But Pack Up, as I just mentioned, that did well in Finland and Ireland and the Netherlands. She's a pretty good singer. I think her music over the past maybe 7 or 8 years at the very least, it is different from her earlier stuff. I feel like her earlier stuff was quite joyful and there was something that felt fairly vintage about her sound. Now I feel as though it's a lot more intimate and, a lot more soulful perhaps, something like that. Anyway, I think she'd be a very interesting choice. There's still plenty of names to go. The next artist, well, this is never happening, but I've seen a rumour. It's the Chemical Brothers. They're not actually brothers. They're from Manchester. They've been together for just over 30 years. Big beat, techno, electronic music, maybe going in the vein of The Prodigy, but maybe not quite as heavy. They performed at Glastonbury not so long ago and they were fantastic. Block rocking beats, galvanise, absolutely amazing. The longevity is very impressive. Loads of #1 albums. They've been successful in Europe as well. They've toured everywhere. Last album in 2023. And they're a pretty big deal. One of the most notable groups like that, possibly to ever come out of the UK. And I think that if they did Eurovision, which ain't going to happen, they would definitely have some other artists to do the vocals. I really think so. Next up is Freya Ridings. And here is a 30-year-old musician from London, Freya Olivia Rose Ridings. 2 albums. The last one was in 2023 called Blood Orange. Both of them have charted in the top 10. She's also had some success in Germany and Ireland. She's released some successful singles, most notably Lost Without You in 2017 and Castles in 2019, which also did quite well in Ireland and Belgium. I have heard some of her music, but I don't really remember it too much. Maybe I should revisit her work. She has been nominated for a Brit Award, and she also was due to perform at King Charles III's coronation, but pulled out because of illness. So there you go. She also has performed at Glastonbury, and her music has appeared on Love Island. Well, that's what you really want. Moving on, I'm going to leave that person out, but next up is Nina Nesbitt, another Scottish musician here. I've been a fan of hers for a very long time, 30 years of age, born in July 1994, pop, folk, especially recently. And I believe, as I talk to you now, tomorrow she's releasing a new song, or a song from her most recent album. Can't quite remember. I did see something about it. She's released 4 albums. Mountain Music, definitely folky in style, came out last September. I don't know whether this is a new song that she's coming out with or not. I suppose I could check before this video is over. Anyway, I really like her voice. It's quite soft and definitely it feels very Scottish because of her accent. Her earlier stuff was very accessible, quite safe pop, and I thought years ago she was probably in contention to represent the UK. Obviously, it never came to pass. But yeah, I feel like she'd be a fantastic choice. And she also dated Ed Sheeran once. The next artist is... Okay, does this person even have a... Okay. Next up is Ellie Goulding, or Ellie Goulding, and she was born in Hereford in 1986, making her 38. She is a big, big star. My friend is a huge fan. Love Me Like You Do from the 50 Shades of Grey soundtrack was a massive hit all over the world. She was Grammy nominated for it. She's sold millions of albums. She's been recognised by Time magazine. 27 million albums she's sold, apparently. And she's had success in the US as well. Her last album was 2 years ago, Higher Than Heaven. It received pretty positive reviews and charted at #1 in the UK. She's also had success on the continent. Is she too big to do it? Is she too famous? I don't really know. I feel as though things have been quite quiet for her for a while. Her music is definitely in the electro-pop category, I would say. And I've also seen this name. Yes, there's a song called Hypnotised, which came out on January the 10th. It's DJ Anima, who is Italian-American, with Ellie Goulding. And the song debuted in Vegas and has had very, very positive reviews. It is 3 minutes long exactly. That's quite handy. Hasn't charted in the UK though, not that that really matters, but a lot of very positive reviews. Very interesting indeed. Very interesting. I haven't heard it, but who knows? Who knows? Next up, another Scottish artist, and if it's this person, oh boy, I'll be a happy man. Lauren Maybury, who you might know better as being the lead singer of the Scottish band Churches. Lauren is 37, which I fail to believe, from Thornhill, Stirling, Scotland. Her music is definitely electronica, pop, synth pop, that sort of thing. Very good stuff. She's got a great voice. I've seen some criticism about her stage presence, but I don't think it's that bad at all. She is on tour very soon, because my friend's going to see her, and I was going to go and see her, and I don't know whether that clashes with Eurovision or not. She's a very vocal musician about her views and politics and blah blah blah. She lives in America. Her first solo album came out last December. It's a cracker. Are You Awake, which came out in September 2023, is one of the best songs I've heard, full stop, over the past few years. Change Shapes, Something in the Air, Crocodile Tears, banger after banger after banger, all of which would be good for Eurovision if they're the right length, which they're not. That's a bit disappointing. The album did quite well. It charted at number 3 in Scotland, but 49 in the UK. I didn't realise it was that bad. That's really disappointingly low. But she's great. She's great. She's got such an identifiable voice, and Churches themselves have been rumoured, but given that they're on hiatus at the moment, I don't think it's going to be them as a band. I think it's more likely to be just her. Yeah, that could be absolutely fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. There's a few more names to go, bear with me. Next up is Rebecca Ferguson, who once upon a time was on the X Factor here in the UK. She's got an MBE, she's 38, from Liverpool. She appeared at Eurovision in 2023. Very rich, smooth, soulful vocals. Not really listened to a lot of her material. She's released 5 albums. The last one was in 2023. 3, 6, 7, 7, 89 are the positions of her albums in the UK Albums Chart. She's had some success in Ireland and moderate success in Switzerland. Nothing's Real But Love, 2011, I remember that coming out. Not really familiar with any of her other stuff, I've got to be honest with you, but she's been rumoured year after year after year, and I think she's actually been asked about it in the past. So who knows, maybe she'll say yes. I'm not sure that would be a choice that really excites me though, I'll be honest with you. Next up, and this would be very interesting, is Jade Thirlwall, who you might know better as being part of Little Mix, who won the X Factor here in the UK years ago, and they were a big, big deal. They had loads of hits, quite a few successful albums. Then they split up. She's from the North. She's 32, born on Boxing Day 1992, and she's just started releasing solo material. Her first single did quite well. The next 2, not so much. It Girl, which is an electro-pop song which is 2.5 minutes long. Haven't heard it yet. Co-written by Lauren Aquilina. That's another name who could represent the UK. That would be quite exciting. This is very interesting. Very interesting. I do need to hear that song. I've heard some good things about it. But yes, maybe it could be Jade, or it could indeed be any of the other artists who were part of Little Mix, because they are no longer together. Next up, Rick Astley. Never Gonna Give You Up man himself. There he is. Me and him share the same birthday. He's 58, from Lancashire. He's been making music for decades. He's won a Brit Award. He's had successful hits in the US. Things faded for him for a while, but now he's arguably bigger than he's ever been. He's always been releasing music. His last album 2 years ago charted at number 2. Never Gonna Give You Up, multi-platinum all over the world. Whenever You Need Somebody, that did very well. Together Forever reached number 1 in America, number 2 in the UK, number 1 in Ireland, number 1 in Canada, number 2 in Belgium. She Wants to Dance With Me, that was a big hit. Cry for Help, that was a big hit. I mean, he's a very popular sort of evergreen figure here in the UK. And I don't know, I mean, I think he'd be a very popular choice because a lot of people do like him as a person and enjoy his music. But I personally would go with somebody a little bit younger, with all due respect, and somebody a little bit more current, I suppose. But who knows? 2 names left. Next up is Rina Sawayama, who apparently was lined up to do it in 2023 and then it didn't work out. I don't know the whole story there. She was born in Japan. She's 34. She's also an actress. She was in John Wick Chapter 4. She is quite an extraordinary musician. It's very difficult to really describe her sound. She's got a very striking image, and she's released 3 albums, and she's had a lot of critical acclaim. Her last album, 4 and 5-star reviews everywhere you look, charted at number 3 in the UK, and did all right for itself in Ireland and Australia, and moderately well elsewhere. But I think with her, you'd get such an artistic type of track. You'd get somebody totally in control of the performance, somebody who'd really put on a show. And I think if it was her, it would be very, very exciting, because although I've not really listened to a lot of her work, I know that she would almost certainly deliver the goods. She did have a song several years ago, Catch Me in the Air, which sounded straight out of the Eurovision songbook. So maybe she'll come back with something like that. However, will it be my dream representative? You will not hear me shut up about this if it is. Amy Macdonald. I've mentioned her before on my channel. I have been a fan of hers since day one. She's from Scotland, 37. Things have been quiet for a while, but she's doing a lot of tour stuff this summer. She's doing the Isle of Wight Festival, I believe, and she's been recording her next album. So maybe the album will be out later in the year, and maybe the first single from that album could be her Eurovision track. Who knows? It's all falling into place very nicely. I've seen her live when she was doing an acoustic tour several years ago. I went with my friend, and it was really fabulous, even though she was unwell. Several albums. This Is the Life, 2007, nearly 20 years ago. Mr. Rock and Roll, This Is the Life, Poison Prince, Run, Sensational. What a classic album for so many people. Her last album was in 2020. I've actually got... It's a photocopied sort of thing, but it's handwritten lyrics, which didn't come with that album. It came with the one before. But I've got sort of handwritten lyrics by Amy Macdonald stuck on my cupboard over there. The Hudson, that's a cracking song. Under Stars, the album and the song, fantastic. Yeah, Dream On, This Christmas Day, that's a brilliant, underrated Christmas song. Absolutely fantastic. And again, a very distinct voice, and definitely one of Scotland's most successful artists this century. And she's had so much success outside of the... If anything, she's been very underrated, if you ask me. But look at this. She's had a number 1 album in the Netherlands. I think This Is the Life sold like hotcakes in the Netherlands. Denmark, she's had a lot of success. Germany, she's big in Germany. She's touring there again later in the year. Austria, she'd be great because people in Europe already know who she is. She's a very established name. She's a great vocalist. She's got so many great songs. She's still absolutely relevant. And I'm trying not to get a bit carried away because a lot of things seem to be falling into place for her. She has represented Scotland at the Free European Song Contest in 2021, finishing 4th. So there you go. This is the next step up, I guess. I've been looking on her social media pages. There's nothing to suggest that she is going to do Eurovision, but you never know. I think it would be an amazing choice, and the BBC, if they've not asked her before, they really need to at some point soon. Anyway, like I said, don't take this video too seriously. There's probably other names that I've not mentioned. There's probably a really big rumour that I've not seen. But those names I've just told you are the names that I have seen. Will it be one of them? I doubt it. But you never know. You just never know. And there's rumours that we will find out within the next couple of days. So watch this space. But there's a lot more happening before then. We're getting the Israeli act. We're getting more Irish songs. And more national finals will be upon us before you know it. Anyway, let me know what you think. Don't take it too seriously. I'll be back with more content soon. Until then, take care of yourselves. Stay safe. And bye for now.